Morning guys, I'm out here at Carcoar Dam this morning. It's beautiful. Just got in last night and managed to get a spot right by the lake's edge, which is lovely. I'm going to go out and just fish the bank a little bit this morning. I've got a mate arriving with a boat at about lunchtime today, and we're going to go and do some lock style. But this morning I'm just going to walk the banks and see what we can find. Alright, I'm going to start just right here in front of camp. There's a nice shallow bank here with weeds on it, and there's been ducks and stuff on there this morning, so I'll have a bit of a cast. I'm starting with a team of 3 unweighted nymphs this morning. The surface water temperature is 12 degrees, which is ideal for trout. It's still early and there's some cloud cover, so my feeling is that the trout may still be high in the water column. Alright, move around a little bit. I might have had one small bump in there, fairly subtle, but not much action in this bay, so keep moving is often the key when you're fishing land-based in lakes like this. A lot of people, I think, just don't cover enough water when they're fishing a lake. They tend to pull up on one little stretch of bank and they don't move very far. They'll stay in one spot for too long and end up just not covering enough water. And often what you find in lakes is that trout can be schooled up just in one particular area. So you might fish one bay and there's nothing there, and then you walk around the corner into the next bay and you find a pot of fish. So keep moving. Shallow bays like this tend to contain good weed beds, and those weed beds in turn can hold a lot of insects and bait species for the trout, so they can be a really good place to target. I soon came up tight to a fish, but it didn't really feel like much of a fish. Redfin, I think. Little redfin. Probably a lot of these guys in here. Okay, just move along a tiny bit. Try out around these sticks and the trees on the point here. Any sort of physical structure you can see in a lake, like these submerged trees, can also be another place that aggregates bait, and is always worth a cast. Well, I'm not really getting anything at the moment, so I might make a little change. I might try a different fly on the point, perhaps go to a bead-headed nymph. Try and get down a little bit deeper and see if that does the trick. Alright, let's move around, try another bay. There's another point around here. Might have a cast off that point. Some ducks working out off the point here. They might possibly be on midge or something like that, so a little bit of a cast out around here, just around the boat ramp. Any kind of birds feeding is another sign that I look for in a lake. If they're feeding on insects, there's a good chance that the trout will also be feeding on them. On a large body of water, little signs like this can sometimes make a big difference, so pay attention. Okay, try out off this point here. There's a bit of wind blowing sort of out to the side off here, so this might fish alright. The wind was starting to pick up a bit and blowing across this point. Fly anglers sometimes curse the wind, but in a lake it can actually be really helpful. A little bit of wind ripple on the surface can make the trout feel more comfortable and bring them up higher in the water column to feed. You can also use the wind current on your fly line to drift your flies slowly, just keeping in contact with them with a super slow retrieve, which is what I'm doing here. Okay, well, it's not really happening at the moment. I'm going to keep working back into this bay, and if I don't get anything soon, then I'll to try a change of approach. I think I might go over to a streamer setup and see if we can find some aggressive fish. If you're not finding success with what you're doing, then you need to keep changing things up until you find something that works. Don't get stuck tying on one rig at the beginning of the day and just fishing with that. On a lake, you need to keep adjusting to the conditions and the area that you're fishing. A little bit of weed on my point fly there. I'm just going to try changing that out for a lighter pattern. Slow down the sink rate a little bit, stay a little higher in the column and see if that makes a difference. Alright, just going to try this little chironomid, midge pupa on the point, see how that goes. Some days fishing tiny patterns like midge or small nymphs very slowly can be just the ticket. On other days, you might be better served by fishing larger streamers or wet flies with a much faster retrieve and covering more water. It just depends on the day. Alright guys, it's just not happening. So I'm going to change over, try a different approach. I'm going to change my reel and put a sink tip on and put a selection of streamers on. I might even put an attractor like a beadhead blob or something on the point, and then a couple of small streamers above it. Try pulling them and see if I can get a reaction bite. Alright, well I've changed over to pretty much the exact opposite approach. I'm going to try a white cormorant on the top, a larger sort of brown trout pattern cormorant in the middle, and a big coral blob on the point with a bead head. I'm going to try pulling and see if I can get a reaction bite. I'm just going to try to cover a lot of water with this technique. I'm not going to stay in one spot for too long. When you're pulling flies, it's important to vary your retrieve and experiment until you find the pattern that the fish are responding to. Change your sink time, incorporate stops and pauses, and vary your speed and style until you find something that works. Got one. A little redfin or something, I think. I don't know. Really woken up yet. Little redfin's eating that blob on the point. There you go. Remember that where you find one fish, you'll very often find more. Redfin are definitely one such schooling fish, but so are trout. And if there are redfin in a particular location, they're probably there because there's food and comfortable conditions for them. Two, actually. So there may well be trout there too. Double of little redfin. Feels slightly better. These small redfin do tend to reach plague proportions in some of our lakes though, so while they can be fun, they can also consume a lot of food in the lake and make it harder to catch anything decent. Really? Oh, it's two. Yeah. Another two redfin. For the next half an hour or so, I had some fun and pulled in maybe a dozen redfin, but I still wasn't finding any trout. Alright, well I've had a bit of fun with the redfin, so I might start working my way back around. Obviously, redfin are not the target species today, hoping to find a trout, but it's better than catching nothing. They're only little ones. If you get bigger ones, then they're very good eating. They seem to be liking the strip pause retrieve, so 2 or 3 sort of medium paced strips and then a long pause, and then when you start moving again, that's when they tend to strike. And just sinking the flies down to depth. I've been doing about a 10 count to get it down. Yeah, and they seem to be responding. Be good if we could catch some bigger ones. On the way back around, I covered some water that I'd fished through before with the nymphs. There was a weed bed a few metres out from shore and then a little drop off out into deeper water. As I brought my streamers up along the outer edge of the weed bed, Suddenly I saw a big flash from the flank of a fish and the line came tight. This was a proper one. I wanted to get this fish back onto the reel so that I could use the drag if it decided to go for a run. So I'm walking back up the bank to keep tension on the fish as I'm winding the loose fly line back up onto the reel. With a larger trout, the last part of the fight, when the leader is inside the rod tip, can be the most dangerous part. I'm fishing 3x tippet, which is 8.8 pounds breaking strain, but even so, a decent trout can break you off if you're not careful. So it's important to use that rod as a buffer to soak up the lunges of the trout and play it carefully. Oh, there we are, guys. There's a beautiful rainbow. Jeez, he's fat. He ate the little trout fry streamer. That's a nice fish. There he is, guys. Beautiful. Oh, beautiful rainbow. Let's get this guy back in the water. Okay, he's a good fish. There he goes. Well, there we go, persistence. I had to work pretty hard for him, but maybe it's just that the day's warming up a little bit, the water's getting a little bit warmer, and perhaps the fish are starting to get active. So it seems that changing over to pulling streamers has paid dividends. Maybe that's what they want. There seems to be a lot of redfin in this lake, so they might be used to feeding on quite a lot of small redfin fry.